All right, let's talk about 2023. I mean, think about it. That was the year AI stopped being this nerdy thing only tech people talked about and just showed up everywhere. Suddenly it was in our politics, our entertainment, even our homework, right? And it was all because of one thing, ChatGPT.
Last year, the entire tech world was basically buzzing with this idea that a revolution was happening. You had ChatGPT just blowing up, hitting 100 million weekly users, Microsoft throws billions of dollars at it, and then, almost overnight, you see all these headlines. Journalists, investors, everyone's saying Google search is dead. The chatbot was going to be the new king of the internet. That was the story.
And let's be honest, we all kind of loved this story, right? It was this amazing underdog tale. You've got OpenAI, the fast, clever newcomer, with Microsoft's deep pockets backing them up. And who are they up against? Google, the big, slow, decaying empire. You know, too bloated to react, too old to really compete. It was a great narrative, but it turns out it was missing a key detail. The house always wins.
So, what if that whole David and Goliath thing was just a sideshow, a distraction? What if the real war, the one that actually mattered, was being fought and won somewhere we weren't even looking? You know, there's that famous quote from General Omar Bradley. Amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. And that's exactly what happened here. This AI war, it wasn't one with cool demos or chatbots that could write poetry. Nope, it was one with something way less sexy. A decade of planning the plumbing.
And this is where it gets really ironic. You know the T in ChatGPT? Well, that stands for transformer. It's the core AI architecture that makes the whole thing work. And guess who invented it? Yeah, Google researchers, back in 2017. They basically discovered fire, handed out the blueprints to everyone, and then just sat back and watched as their rivals tried to use that same fire to burn down their castle.
So, while everyone, especially the media, was getting mesmerized by the flashy consumer chatbots, Google was quietly executing a strategy of, well, total market suffocation. Let's break down the 3 pillars of how they pulled this off.
Okay, pillar number 1, logistics. At the end of the day, the war for AI is a war for raw computing power. And that means it's a war for one thing, silicon chips.
Now, you've probably noticed that for the past few years, one company has had the entire industry in a headlock, NVIDIA. If you want to train a big AI model, if you're Microsoft or Meta or OpenAI, you have to pay what everyone in the industry calls the Jensen tax. It's this huge markup you pay for their essential chips. I mean, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars just flowing to NVIDIA. These companies are basically renting their entire future.
But here's the thing. Google saw this coming. A decade ago, as far back as 2015, they started building their own custom chips from the ground up, their tensor processing units, or TPUs. So now, because they own the whole stack, the chips, the servers, the data centers, even the fiber optic cables, their cost to run AI is just a fraction of what their competitors pay. And that cost advantage, that's not just a nice to have, it's a weapon.
So they've got a cheaper, more efficient engine. Great. But what good is an engine if you don't have any fuel? And in the world of AI, that fuel is data.
And this is Google's second pillar, a data moat that is basically impossible to cross. See, for years, all these AI companies just trained their models by scraping everything they could find on the open internet. But then, the walls started going up. Publishers started suing. Reddit locked down its data. The free-for-all was over. The open web slammed its doors shut.
And this was a massive crisis for pretty much everyone except Google. I mean, just think about it. Google owns Google Books. That's a digital copy of nearly every book ever written. But even bigger than that, they own YouTube. That is the single largest collection of human speech and dialogue on the entire planet. So while everyone else is scrambling to license data, Google is just sitting there transcribing 2 decades of human history. You literally can't buy that.
Okay, so Google's got the chips, and they've got the data. Now for the third and final pillar, how they took all of that and weaponized it by breaking the one rule that held the internet together for 20 years.
You see, for 2 decades, there was this unspoken deal. Publishers and creators make content, and in return, Google sends them traffic. It was simple. Well, in 2024, Google ripped up that deal. Now, with their new AI overviews, Google's AI just reads the articles for you and spits out the answer right there on the search page. So what happens? You get your answer, sure, but the person who actually created the content, they get nothing. 0 traffic, 0 revenue. The entire web just became Google's personal free database.
So you've got the hardware, you've got the data. That is a powerful 1-2 punch. But none of it means anything if people don't actually use your stuff. And this brings us to Google's final move, the checkmate, how they made their AI completely, totally unavoidable.
Think about using something like ChatGPT. It takes effort, right? You got to open a new tab, you got to log in, you got to paste in your text. It's a process. In today's world, that's a huge amount of friction. So what did Google do? They eliminated the friction completely. Their AI, Gemini, isn't something you go to. It's already there, baked right into your phone. It's in your keyboard, your text messages, your camera.
How'd they do it? Well, first, they own Android. That's the operating system on something like 3 times billion phones. But then, they made the really smart move. Instead of trying to fight Apple, they just paid them billions of dollars to put Gemini right inside the iPhone. And just like that, with 2 moves, Google locked up 100% of the mobile market.
And that's the key takeaway here. It doesn't matter if you have an Android or an iPhone, you are going to be using Google's AI. They don't have to convince you to switch, they just win by default. For billions of us, it's simply unavoidable.
But what if I told you that everything we've talked about so far, the chatbots, the battle for search, even taking over our phones, what if all of that is just the opening act? The real prize here isn't about owning your search bar. The real prize is using AI to own the future of the physical economy, and that is Google's real endgame.
I mean, just look at what their DeepMind lab is doing. While other companies are busy teaching their chatbots how to flirt, DeepMind is out here solving problems that have stumped scientists for generations. Their AI, AlphaFold, cracked the 50-year-old protein folding problem. That's a huge step towards curing diseases. Another one of their AIs discovered 2.2 million new crystal structures. We're talking about the building blocks for things like superconductors.
This isn't about hitting next quarter's sales targets. Google is playing a completely different game here. They're thinking on a 50-year time horizon. The bet is that if you own science AI today, you will eventually own the entire physical economy tomorrow.
And this kind of leads us to a treat that's a little uncomfortable, you know? We all love that classic Silicon Valley story. A couple of people in a garage inventing something that changes the world. But the age of AI proves that story is, well, it's over. This kind of technology needs money on the scale of a small country. It needs its own power plants, billion-dollar factories. The startup dream? It's not the reality for this revolution.
So what's the final result? Google already had all the pieces on the board. They had the chips, the data, the distribution. So while the rest of the world was mesmerized by the ChatGPT storm, Google just leaned in. They used their immense weight. And that revolution that was supposed to finally take down the tech giants, it did the exact opposite. It made them immortal.
So here we are, we're entering this new era where AI is just an invisible utility. Like electricity, it's just there, in the background, powering everything. The war is over. Soon enough, you'll stop even thinking about it. You'll just be using it without a second thought. But that leaves us with one really big question to chew on. Did this whole AI revolution actually deliver progress for all of us? Or did it just end up creating a more powerful, untouchable monopoly?